John Grace has worked in the biotechnology research commercialisation space for over 50 years. He was the Chief Executive Officer for 11 years for AMRAD, a listed company commercialising medical research technology. He has been a member of a number of government committees and private company boards, in the most recent serving as the chair of UniSouth Australia Ventures. He was a vice president of ATSI and served on the ATSI board over a period of 10 years. His award as an Officer of the Order of Australia in 2018 was for his contribution to biotechnology research and its commercialisation. In this session, we will also have Dr. Shamila Gamlath, who will then speak. Shamila is the Director, Research Commercialisation Branch for the Australian Government Department of Education. Shamila will speak about benchmarking tools which the Department of Education have been using to analyse the SCOPRA data and will demonstrate its use for universities. Shamila is an economist cum statistician by training with a PhD in macroeconomic modelling, who entered the public service after working as a teacher and academic in Australia and overseas. Her current role in the department primarily involves research and analysis to inform research commercialisation, programs like the Australia's Economic Accelerator and the analysis of the characteristics of Australia's research workforce. Please leave your questions until both speakers have finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie, and you left out my other achievement, and that is that my presence on the KCA board increases the average age by 50%. And so I'd like to start quickly by thanking Universities Australia for allowing KCA to be involved, and I also thank our friends at the Department of Education. The triumvirate is very pertinent in these times, and it's terrific to be able to have this session adjacent to the summit. I do the pressing. Which button? I think it needs to be turned on. That's probably the trick. Thank you. I'll go past that one. So I chair the SCOPRA committee. These are the members of the committee, and they also include a member from AMRI, the Association of Australian Medical Research Institutes. I'll come to that in a minute. So KCA, I should do a plug for our organisation. It's a membership organisation akin to UA, but on a smaller scale. And the members are basically the universities are the members, but through their TTO offices. And so a majority of universities in Australia are members, but there's still a couple more that we'd like to see join up. But regardless of that, SCOPRA is done for all of the sector. We do advocacy, training. There was a discussion before about training. Training is very high on our agenda, and you get an accreditation for the training through our association with the Association of Technology Transfer Professionals, which is an international body that accredits courses that we conduct. So what's SCOPRA? Now, I apologise to those people in the room who know exactly what it is, and there's nothing I can do to help you through the next few moments. But we annually collect key commercialisation data, and a lot of thought went into what the data is, and we'll talk a bit about that. But it's for everybody. We don't, with member or non-members alike. We see this as a service to the public research sector. It's no value just to have our members providing data. We want everyone to provide data, and so we open it to everyone. It's open at the middle of each year. It's open for 2 months. We get the majority of our submissions on the last day of the 2 months. But having said that, if you're a provider of data, you've got to do a lot of work in your own organisation, and every time I have the opportunity, I thank you for doing that, because if the data collector doesn't provide the data, there's no SCOPRA, and it's not necessarily, and I now put out a plug to the rest of the audience, an institutionally driven activity. So if the institution is really behind this, then we would, make it a little bit easier for that poor data collector. End up with an Excel spreadsheet, and we're going to hear about some more dynamic products in this area with the next speaker. And I do note that the participation is voluntary and the metrics are self-reporting. Natalie mentioned, and thanks to Natalie on her great job here today as well, that GemMaker provide, we contract to GemMaker the collection of the data and the collation of it all. And between her colleague Jessica Simpson and I, when we see the odd bit of data, and that's true, odd bit of data that doesn't pass a laugh test, then you'll get a call or an email from one of us. But we don't actually go down any deeper and see whether, there is no auditing of the data, but you can feel fairly comfortable when you see how it goes over a period of time. This is the key slide in anything to do with Scopra, and in fact, I sat on the ATTP International Metrics Committee for a while. I managed to pass that on because I don't like having meetings at 2 o'clock in the morning, to Peter Cohn-Boris. And this slide is now in their collection, because if you don't think about Scopra in the notion of it having sort of 3 categories of metrics: normalising metrics, work output metrics, and commercialising metrics, then you're not really knowing what you're doing it for. And the people who don't know about Scopra, this is why we do it, so that you can get any one of the data in the middle or right-hand collection normalised against the metrics on the left. I have been trying to push the notion of using a number of researchers as the key international normalising metric, but people don't count their researchers as well in other countries as we do here. I think thank you to the department for requiring it, I think is the answer to why. But if you have normalised against researchers, then you deal with pricing parity. So it doesn't matter how much they earn or what the exchange rate or anything else is. But anyway, there is quite a movement in the whole international area. There are 16 metrics in all this. Some of them are old and some are existing and new in regard to patents and other IP assets, spin-outs, etc. These are the people who do it, who have in 2023 who came along, and the universities were 35. We get pressure from my friend Harold here to try and get that up to 39, is it? 40, thank you very much. We do this slide for the whole survey, but I've redone it just for universities. And so this, I was going to busily sort of do some calculations while David was talking to see how we go, but it was a bit too hard. But thank you to Autumn, because we did copy their slide. But the National Survey of Research Commercialisation, which was started by the ARC some 25 years ago, which I happen to be on the committee for, in fact, shamelessly or shamefully adopted the Autumn survey as the basis. So these are 35 universities. The key one in this message, Harold's been hit with this number a few times, one TTO person for 157 researchers. But this is a proclamation to whoever, policymakers, politicians, others. There were 47 spin-outs. There was $808 million collected from companies for contract research, $100 million for commercialising income. The mythology about, Australia's no good at commercialising research should be modified to, we're pretty good at commercialising research, but we can do a lot better. And I think the trick is to see how we can do a lot better. KCA we don't do commentaries. This is a data collection. This is for you to analyse, others to do data, proclamations about. And of course, and I'll get to the final uses of my last slide, so I better not carry on too much. So in the university sector, this is the last 5 years. We've done this for 7 years. You'll notice that back in 2019 we had 24, and in 2018 it was 20. Is this 5 years? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So there's 2 more years down below, and so we're great. We've got more, but down the bottom we were up to about 90% of the research expenditure in the country. So it was a lot of the smaller universities. Again, you can look at the numbers as they stand. These are the normalising data numbers. These are the worked outcome numbers, so numbers of LOAs. So all of the stuff that David, that Autumn collecting, except for researchers, is here on our slide, and you can do your analysis of how that compares internationally, and others are doing that. And then the commercialising income. The equity held in spin-outs is quite a considerable number, but there is a bit of a flatness, as you go up the numbers, and that's where we can do more is definitely the message if one was giving a message. So what's the value? So the value, and I sort of covered it pretty well in some of the things I've been saying, but certainly it's an internal thing, first of all. How does it help your research organisation? Particularly discussions about resourcing, discussions about training and where it sits in the organisation. Ultimately, a Vice-Chancellor sits there with 2 main requirements. One is teaching and one's research, and commercialisation sort of gets a little to the one side, but it's very, and it really comes to the front mainly in terms of promotion and storytelling. But if it's an investment, I think the real issue here is to regard it as an investment rather than a cost, but that helps organisations make those decisions. Government is interested. The strategic alliance that Harold mentioned between KCA and the department, that's been very beneficial. It's beneficial to the department in being able to access the data for things that they're working on, beneficial to us. That gives us greater credibility in what we're doing, and we're grateful for that. I mentioned the internal performance. It enables local international comparisons, and that's still work in progress. Data for external queries, and data for resourcing. So I think I've got to the end of my slides, and I open for questions. Oh no, it's after Shamila. So thank you. Sorry.
Hello, everyone. So I will be talking to you about some of the tools we have developed through our partnership with KCA to support the sector to benchmark and compare performance and identify areas for growth and collaboration, essentially. And today, I'm going to demonstrate to you a dashboard we have developed as part of this work. But in addition to this dashboard I'm going to talk to you about today, we have also done other things. So, for instance, last year we developed a set of benchmarking reports for a group of pilot universities. And many thanks to some of you that acknowledged and responded to these reports. So, tools like the dashboard I'm going to show you in a moment can also potentially help with informing our policy agenda, because we are very interested in looking at how these metrics evolve over time and interact with the various programs that we run at the department. So without further ado, let me jump into the dashboard. Let's see. Page of the dashboard, you can either navigate through the dashboard using this table of contents, which you will be taken to when you hit the start button, or you can navigate using the tabs at the bottom. So the first page is a tabular depiction of the full historical Scopa data set. Essentially, you can filter for different years as well as for different university groupings. And you can also filter for trailblazer lead universities and partner universities. We do have a dedicated page for the trailblazer universities. But note that these are the universities associated with the Trailblazers program as opposed to the Trailblazers themselves. So I have already picked the Australia country filter because we have included New Zealand data as well. And if we look at, say, research commercialization income, the top performer is the University of Queensland, and they are also the top performer for invention disclosures as well as the value of equity in startups and spin-outs. Now, we have also normalized outcome variables by research expenditure to enable fairer comparisons across institutions. So if we take the value of, say, research commercialization income per $100 million of research expenditure, UQ still emerges as the top performer. But if you take invention disclosures per $100 million of research expenditure, the top performer is Swinburne, while for the value of equity in startups and spin-outs, the best performer in normalized terms is Deakin University. Now, moving on to the institution spotlight page, it provides insights into the performance of institutions relative to the average for all participating institutions over time. So on the first page, we could look at a particular year, but here we can track performance over time. So I have filtered for Australian universities here. We have included New Zealand institutions as well as other research institutions participating in Scopa for both countries here, if you look at the different filters available. So for the purpose of this presentation, I'm just going to focus on Australian universities. So at the bottom, if we just work with no filters, with no institution filters at all, the values at the bottom capture the average performance across all participating institutions over all these years. So if I go into the institution filter, I can pick either a specific institution or a custom set of institutions and track their average performance over time. So I will, as an example, pick UTS. So what we see now is the performance of UTS compared to the average performance of all participants over the years. So we can see that UTS performed better than the average in terms of patent applications filed per year, new invention disclosures, as well as new startups and spin-outs, noting that all these are normalized variables. So these are the values per $100 million of research expenditure. And what you see at the bottom is the average for UTS across the years they have participated in Scopa, which is actually since 2018. On the university group performance page, we can look at the performance of different university groups. So what we see without any filters is the averages for the different university groups relative to the overall average based on normalized values again. So if we look at, say, research contracts, we can see that the dotted line is the total university average. We can say that the RUN and the ATN universities have done better than the average in recent years. And of course, we can filter for a specific university group here. So if I filter for the ATN, what we can now see is the performance of the ATN universities relative to the average over time. So, for instance, with patent applications filed, ATN has done better than the average for all participants over the last several years. Now, once you pick a group, you can also pick an institution within that group to look at how they have performed relative to their peer group. So if we take the University of Newcastle, we can see, for instance, that they have a very strong trajectory, upward trajectory for research contract value compared to the ATN as a whole. So noting that the red dotted line is the selected university, which in this case, again, is Newcastle. Well, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through every page on this dashboard, but lastly, I will show you this page, which depicts some key commercialization metrics using bubble charts. So I have filtered here for Australia. You can also filter for university groups as well as trailblazer lead universities and partner universities, as well as by research expenditure bands here. So I'm not applying any of those filters. We're just taking an open sort of view of this aspect of the dashboard for the purpose of demonstrating what it can do. So if we say pick new LOAs, for example, what we can see here is that there are some universities here that undertake high research expenditure. Yeah, so this axis is research expenditure, and the bubbles themselves capture the absolute number of new LOAs. The y-axis here looks at the value of new LOAs per $100 million of research expenditure. So yes, there are some universities towards the right-hand corner which produce, as I said before, more LOAs in absolute terms, but take this teal bubble here, which is Macquarie University. So their research expenditure is relatively lower than some of the other universities here. It's between the 200 to 400 million band, essentially. But they are producing an impressive number of LOAs relative to that research expenditure. That's what this depiction, this graph captures. So this shows that they are achieving more bang for buck on this dimension, for example. So this gives some useful insights into the efficiency with which certain commercialization outcomes are produced. I'll show you a couple of other things we have done. So we have not incorporated this into our dashboard yet, but these are some international comparisons we have done. Of course, the data is quite patchy. And as David mentioned in the keynote address, there are various sort of contextual factors that need to be taken into account when doing these international comparisons. But what we have here is Australia's performance relative to a number of comparator countries. So Canada and US from the autumn data and New Zealand from the Scopa data. So as we can see, Australia lags behind all these key commercialization metrics. In fact, we are just ahead of Switzerland here. But this is when normalized by research expenditure. So this is per $100 million of purchasing power parity dollars of research expenditure. But let me end on a good news story here. It's all relative when it comes to these comparisons. So yes, once again, on the left-hand panel, we have invention disclosures normalized by research expenditure. And yes, we aren't performing very strongly in that regard. But on the right-hand panel here, We have Australia's performance in terms of invention disclosures when normalized by research commercialization staff FTE. And as you can see, over this entire period, we are in the top 3 spots. So this is really testament of the great work that tech transfer professionals are doing out there. And considering that we have a relatively small pool of tech transfer professionals, and also there is that lack of investment in the profession, this is impressive. So on that note, yes, we are very keen to make these analytics and these products accessible, available to the sector. And we are very keen to hear your feedback on how we can further refine and develop this work. And also, we are interested in incorporating metrics alongside other information to inform our policy agenda and future policy. Thank you.
Just think about what would happen if we invested in our tech transfer professionals. Just based on that, that was fantastic data. Thank you, Shamila. I'm going to just eat into this session very, very quickly. Just if there is like 1 or 2 questions tops for either John Grace or Shamila. Either everyone is, no, there we go. I was going to say everyone's so impressed that there is no question. It's all been answered. Is this
Hi, Peter Bentley, Innovative Research Universities. Really quick question. Is the data open like the previous survey of research commercialisation? Can anyone download the data? Thanks.
No, the data is provided in detail for all years to anyone who provides data. So respondents get it. It's not, once you get it, you don't have a confidentiality agreement. So if anyone who receives it does something that provides it more publicly, then we don't have a control over that, and nor would we seek it, because we'd never be able to enforce it. The idea of doing that was really to encourage people to respond. You know, this is your data, you're providing it. I think as time goes on, there will be a point where it will be more publicly available. Just adding to Shamila's presentation, and I have to do a plug for Microsoft. So that's done on Power BI, which you know, I'm getting tired of having to learn yet another piece of software or whatever. But it is widely used in the industry, I gather, and it is a very powerful tool. So each year we provide the detailed data and a set of graphs, because we figure that a lot of organisations, you know, don't have the resources to analyse the data. The Power BI will replace the set of graphs, and it will be available on our web to all respondents. And I would guess maybe next year it might be more publicly available. But what we'll do is do a survey of all of our Scopa respondents and just get feedback that they're comfortable with that.
Sure, Tim.
So one of the things that we've improved a lot in the traditional research outcomes over the last decade is improving gender equity and access to early career researchers to all the amazing research grants funding that's available. But when it comes to the commercialisation knowledge transfer space, we haven't really started looking at that. And I know that it's really hard to add metrics on metrics, but should we be looking at the gender of these disclosures of the founders of these startup companies, so that we're starting to really have some policy implications, so that all researchers are encouraged down this path, not just one particular type of researcher? We talking same talk, Erin?
I was going to say that Anita Nugent at IP Australia is doing a piece of work just on that. And so she's published a couple of papers now in terms of gender around IP filings, and she was tracking that back through Scopa data as well. So I think there will definitely be a piece of work. I'm not sure if KCA will take that on necessarily in the future in terms of trying to do it as part of this. But I think for motivated individuals that had a passion for it and wanted to put a project forward, I think Quinn would definitely take a proposal.
Right. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the next session in